Good afternoon and good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone who's joining us, both live and on demand in the future. Welcome to Red Pepper's continuing webinar series on experience management. I'm Rob Hinckley. I lead the marketing team here at Red Pepper, and I'd like to thank Brooklyn Ben-Dixon, who is running the webinar behind the scenes. We are planning on a brief Q&A at the end of today's webinar, so please submit your questions in the chat. Our objective with these XM webinars is to uncover insights into every step of your experience management programs, from XM strategy and planning to technical implementation to ongoing program advisory. And we aim to do this through discussions with exceptional guests. And I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. Taylor Peinhardt is the Director of Member Experience at Fortera Credit Union. And I've been looking forward to this discussion with Taylor for a few weeks. Her presentation is titled Aligning Reputation and Ratings to Drive Growth. Taylor, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. Yes, I am Taylor. I am the Director of Member Experience at Fortera. I have been in the FI space for a little over 7 years at this point, with my focus on member experience and marketing during that time. I have a varied and exciting job that always differs from day to day. All of my fellow CU friends who are joining today will understand this. I spend most of my time listening to and learning from our members through a variety of channels, but I also own a lot of other things like our website, large portions of team member education and training, project management, experience through our online applications for products. So we wear a lot of hats. But I'm very thrilled to be here to talk about this project in particular. It is one of my favorites, if not my most favorite project that I've ever had the opportunity to do while working in finance. And I can't wait to talk about it. So thank you for driving, both Rob and Brooklyn. I really appreciate it so that I can talk a lot with my hands. And we can go ahead and go to the next slide. One thing I do want to mention specifically for this discussion is one of my challenges or the frustrations that I feel during these presentations is that frequently I will go to them and I feel like the person who's presenting information has given me great concepts and kind of like vague ideas of what they did, but I really want to be able to walk away with actionable items. So that is my goal for this presentation. I want you to be able to walk away with the actual steps and understand what we did to achieve our goals for this project. So I'll be showing you all of those things, whether they're screenshots, our actual tools that we used, our timelines throughout this presentation. But if you have any follow-up questions or you would like any additional information, please, please, please reach out to me. I highly encourage you to do that. I completely mean it. I absolutely believe in the sharing is caring mentality of credit unions. I think it strengthens our communities. I think it strengthens our cause. And so I hope you reach out to learn more. I would love to share. And with that, I think we can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us how Fortera identified online ratings as a critical challenge, and both to your growth and your future, and how you selected this as something you wanted to tackle?
Yes, I absolutely can. So when my boss and I started working at Fortera, it was pretty obvious that our online reputation was low, and that was a problem. This was obvious because how likely are you to go to a dentist that has a 2.7 Google star rating, right? You're probably not going to run into the door, be excited to deal with that person. The same is true for financial institutions, right? I was afraid that people were looking at that score and thinking they're going to lose my money. Every transaction with them is going to be incredibly taxing. And that was the last thing that we wanted. So we knew that was a problem. Additionally, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we were also up and running with Qualtrics at that time, and the data that I was receiving through our surveys, be it our transactional NPS or our satisfaction scores, was absolutely not aligned with what we were seeing on our Google reviews. And we found that really shocking when we first looked at it. And so we really had to dig into those numbers to understand why that was happening, which we eventually uncovered. But I do want to tell you a little bit about our starting stats. So we started with less than 300 Google reviews that we had collected from 2014 onto 2022. And we had an average rating of a 2.7. Something to note about that, the only good thing about these stats was that having less than 300, we felt confident that we could turn this around, right? This wasn't an entrenched score. We weren't overcoming huge hurdles and barriers with, massive volumes of responses. That was the only good thing we felt like we had to our advantage when we were starting. And then I'm very proud to announce that our ending stats, as of just this past week, I have over 1,200 reviews, with an average score of a 4.4 as of 2 days ago. So that's pretty exciting.
I love hearing the context from the beginning to end and the preview of what we're going to be discussing here. I heard you talk about NPS and the data you were collecting with Qualtrics. Were you, at the beginning of this, already working with Red Pepper as well?
Yes, I was actually working with both Qualtrics and Red Pepper at this time. And I say this, with immense respect and love and thankfulness. It was those relationships that actually helped me create this project, and make it successful. Um, I think for Qualtrics, they provided us with such high quality data and dashboards, and all the information that we received through them helped us make the case that we needed to make to multiple people in our organization. At first, our leadership, but then to our team members later on, and prove to them that this is something that we could easily change with just some focused effort. And then the things that we got from Red Pepper was just an amazing partner, especially through our lead consultant, Jaron. He's truly a gem of a human being. He is the one who introduced me to two primary tools, actually, that I have on slides following this. And so we can talk about them. And those tools were really, they were like the core of our project. And I think what really made it successful. So let's go ahead and talk about the first one. So the first tool was the Google review survey question that we had. This was essentially a question that Qualtrics has pre-built that you can add to your surveys. And it's a super simple question. It essentially says to the member or the customer who's filling out the survey, hey, thank you so much for sharing your feedback. Would you like to take an extra second and share your feedback on Google as well? So it auto-populates their answer for them. It already takes all the work out of it, and it just allows them to push their answer out directly to Google. And I can remember thinking, this is such an easy, low friction solution. Why not incorporate this into my existing surveys and programs to just start seeing if we can make a difference on these numbers? So Jaron introduced me to this. I mean, it was honestly days after it had launched and become live. He was so aware of the things that Qualtrics was working on, and I was so thankful for that, because Qualtrics is such an immense program, and they have so much going on all the time, and they always are developing something new, which is great. They have a culture of improvement. But to be on top of that and to be so knowledgeable, I think that was the true value of our relationship with Red Pepper. And that's what I'm most thankful to Jaron too, because he was always bringing me the newest and latest things. He was so informed, and I just really trusted that relationship. So this was the first thing he brought me. And then the second thing that he brought me was actually our Google review dashboard. So this is the dashboard that we use to inform all of our teams throughout the project experience as a whole. This is just screenshots of the top portion of it. It extends, much further down, and has members' information and context and their comments, diving into detail and like tracking their sentiment and whatnot. But this dashboard, it's real time, it updates constantly. And so people were logging in multiple times a day to see, hey, how are we doing? How are these updates going? Have we gotten any new reviews today? And it was really the heart of enthusiasm around the project. And this dashboard was actually a pre-built dashboard that Qualtrics provides to people, right? So it just exists and you can roll it out. And Jaron told me about it. He actually told me about it when it was in its developmentation stages. So I got to get feedback on it early on. And then once it had launched, this is not an exaggeration, he stood it up for me within 5 minutes. And I was ready to go. And I was like, this is probably one of the coolest things that's ever happened. It doesn't usually go that way for projects. And I was so thankful to him that he just showed me, go ahead and turn this on. Let's go ahead and start using it and measuring right now. So those were the things I'm probably most thankful for from both of those relationships.
Yeah, huge shout out to Jaron. We love him. He's one of our most experienced implementers, and he's a great part of our team. It's great to see those tools. I think those are tools that the people out there that are watching this can tap into and use. Can you take us deeper, though, into the strategy of how you're going to address moving these reviews and their future impact? And then talk to us about buy-in a little bit, because I know that's a challenge for many people.
Yes. So we had multiple things that we needed to do. One was obviously overcoming some concern and resistance, which I'm going to talk a little bit more deeply about. Two was setting those clear goals and making tentative plans. And then we decided that we really needed to engage, inform, and praise our team during this process. So, for the first thing that we had to do, we had to overcome concern and resistance. So, essentially, what we were met with when we brought this project to everybody was a history of bad Google reviews. And so, when we brought it up, people were already in their minds thinking, oh my gosh, it's such a negative score. We've had so many years of negative scores. And what they were really scared of is that if we openly invited our members to give us feedback, that it was just going to continue to be a wave of negativity. And understandably so, right? That's a really reasonable concern. The second thing that they were really concerned about was that one of our primary things that we get complaints about at the time was our ATMs. They desperately needed to be updated, and anyone who works in the FI space understands this. When you go to update your ATMs, it's a costly project. It's draining on all of your resources. It's time consuming, and nobody likes to do it, but it's essential to take care of your members. And so, after a lot of discussions, this point, overcoming the resistance and concern, this is one of the longest portions of the project. It really took us a long time to get people to get excited about this and be open to this concept. But after having multiple discussions, we kind of came to an understanding and an agreement that we would wait until after we completed the biggest pain point, which was finishing that ATM implementation project. And once we did that, they felt comfortable with us going ahead and asking for feedback. So that was probably one of the biggest hurdles that we had. The second thing that we had to do was set clear goals and make some tentative plans. To let's go ahead and go one slide forward. I would like to show everybody just the difference in these numbers so that they can have some context for what I'm talking about. So when I'm talking about our leadership team being concerned about the types of comments that we're going to have come in, on the slide in front of you, I have our numbers for our Google reviews, and I have the amounts and volumes that we had coming in the years prior, and then I had the scores associated with those. And you can see that essentially what we were experiencing is we were having handfuls of members at the time, on average 30, 40, 50 members per year, defining the vision of our organization as a whole. And we have over 80,000 members, right? Like, they were defining the entire reputation. And something that my boss and I could see really easily is that when we went and looked at our transactional NPS and we went and looked at our satisfaction scores that we were seeing come through Qualtrics, we were getting these really great numbers. We were getting 60s and 70s consistently. And I'm sure most people on the call understand this, but when we're talking about NPS, we're talking about Net Promoter Score, and we're talking about scores that fall within a range of negative 100 to positive 100. And so seeing scores in the 60s or 70s, that was more aligned with our peers. That was more aligned with our benchmarks. That is what we were shooting for. And we were seeing these reviews come in the thousands compared to our Google reviews, which were lower scores, but we only had, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 a year coming in for years. And so once we were able to show how different these were and say, I think if we just invited our members to come into this Google review space, I think they would be more willing to share positive reviews than negative. And I think what was happening was essentially people who were really frustrated or really concerned, they were going out of their way to elevate their voice, which we all understand. The loudest voice gets heard often, and those are frequently complaints and frustrations that filter to the top. But what wasn't happening organically was these really positive, beautiful stories of members saying, I love coming here. My transactions are wonderful. I really rely on this team. I only do my banking with Emily. Those kind of comments weren't getting filtered to Google. And so just by organically adding that question and providing them that bridge, we saw a shift almost instantaneously in how our scores were coming in and what they were ranking. So that was really exciting. And then as far as setting our goals, I did want to show you just the actual timeline that we laid out. I want to show you everything that we did, how long it took, kind of what that influenced in the project. So when we were initially talking about how long this project would take, we did not know how long it would take. We were uncertain. We were guesstimating 2, maybe 3 years. Once again, we knew we would have a focus on this. We knew we would collect some reviews, but we just genuinely did not know how long it would take. Much to our delight and surprise, we finished it in under a year, and we far exceeded our goals, which was really, really exciting. So you can see where we let the new ATM project complete in the summer of 2022. And then we launched in August of 2022. And by launching, I mean, we simply added that Google question to the bottom of our surveys, just allowing members to go through that experience of pushing their review out to Google. And then over the next couple of months, we did a couple of small things just to make the conversation easier for our team members to have. So we created Google review cards. Those are simply conversation cards to help guide a conversation, kind of gives everyone a general script of what to say to people. And if they don't have time to have that conversation in the transaction, they can just include that card so someone can scan it later. And it just makes it easier for the member to give us a review that way. We also added QR codes to our receipts. That's where I think you really see an interesting and exciting turn. And I think that's where our staff got really excited. So when we added the QR codes to our receipts, you can see that early 2023, we get that first initial bump of 33 responses. And that dramatically changed our score in comparison to the prior months. And so that got everyone really excited. And then you can see where we have an absolute explosion of collecting responses the following month, where we collected 111 responses in March. And that's just because team members were talking, right? During that time, I set up a Teams channel because there was so much enthusiasm around the project. I was like, I need a space for us to share all of this information. So I added all the users into that one space, and we were constantly updating each other and sharing things, right? I was going in every couple of days and sharing updates and highlights and things I was really proud of and really impressed with. Team members were coming back in that same space and providing me feedback. So they were saying, I need help with this. I think this could be better. And I was modeling for them, this is what it looks like to be open, to be transparent with these changes. And so they felt really confident that their concerns were being addressed in a very timely manner. And that really positive dynamic of just sharing information with one another, constantly promoting each other, being open about our shortcomings, that is what got people the most excited. And that's where we see that absolute explosion. And then after that, we see this really consistent trend of getting in the 60s for reviews, as far as numbers for each month. And that was awesome. You can see that we have a consistently high score during that time. And then we start to hit our goals, right? So we hit our short-term goal, which was each of our branches individually hitting 3.0 or higher. That was something that my boss and I thought, this would be a good medium stepping stone kind of goal for people to help keep the momentum. They'll get excited. They'll have something that they're achieving midway through the process. And then we achieved our final goal, which was hitting 4.0 organization wide. We did that it was actually the very end of June, very beginning of July. And we were thrilled. And at that time, I was like, well, we completed this project in under a year. This is way better than we expected. The results, it blew us out of the water. And I told everybody to calm down and celebrate this moment and relax. And I told them that this was probably the biggest milestone we were going to hit as a team, that I was really proud of everybody. And what I didn't want them to do was to work to that same degree of intensity after that. I wanted them to actually take a break and rest. I thought that was really important. And so we see that they had so much momentum that, we still continued to get tons of great results. But then we kind of fell into our natural rhythm, which is around that 30-ish mark. And that's typically where we sit every month from now, because this has become a part of our process and it's just a part of our daily routine now. So that is an overview of what the project looks like and an overview of our goals and the steps we took to finally get there. And I wanted to include some slides just to talk to you about how I promoted team members and got them excited about the project. So this is actually a screenshot of a slide that I used in an update early on in the project. So early in our launch, this was in September, this was mid-September when I was giving this update. I was just showing them, at this point, we had only added the Google question to our surveys. And I was just showing them what a dramatic impact it had had. I was like, in the month we added it, we got double the reviews that we had had any of the months prior, and the reviews were getting better and better. The quality of those reviews were going up and up. And I think little moments like this went a really long way in getting people excited about the project. And then we can go ahead and go to the next slide. The other thing that I did was informing and praising the team. So this was that Teams channel that I was talking about. I was dropping messages and updates in there so often. And this is where in your projects, it's really beneficial to have a super extroverted person. That is me. I love going above and beyond and being silly and being kind and being just overly enthusiastic because this project was worth that energy. It was worth that excitement. So we spent a lot of time rewarding and celebrating people. We rewarded people who got the most positive reviews, like number. We rewarded people who had the most moving reviews. And we did that consistently throughout the entire project. We did reward them. We have an internal point system where we reward team members. But in addition to that, we called them out publicly in our monthly meetings with our organization as a whole. We do virtual check-ins with our CEO, and we called them out by name. And from the conversations that I had with team member when we were doing our lessons learned and our wrap up, that was super meaningful and powerful then to get recognized for all their hard work in front of over 200 of their peers. And I think we can go ahead and go to the next one.
Yeah, I love that. I love that focus on the team and the energy you brought to that. It's such a great lesson. What are some of the things that surprised you or that emerged that you sort of learned? What did you find as you did this project that maybe was new to you?
The best and most interesting findings that we had were, one, creating those additional feedback channels and just making it easier for our team to have that conversation. It's not that that moved the needle the most, but it's that when we did that before the project got really exciting and people were really involved. So by doing that in advance of that anticipation building, then when people had the energy, they were just able to run because we had provided them with all the feedback and things that they might possibly need and all the channels that they might need. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide and I'll show you some examples of that. We talked a little bit about the branch cards. These are just cards that have QR codes that members can scan and they can review their branch right there in the moment. We talked about the receipt that has the QR code, but we also, something I didn't even talk about earlier in the presentation, we built a landing page on our website. These, once again, these are little, straightforward kind of common sense things that I think everyone would think to do. But what really made the difference is we did them before everyone got really excited, and then they were just able to absolutely knock it out of the park because we had given them all the resources they need. The second thing we did is, go ahead and go to the next slide, is we really built a robust knowledge base. So Qualtrics at the time had a limitation on the number of users that you could have, which since then they have removed. You can have unlimited users, just FYI if anyone's interested. But we had approximately 40 people, maybe a little less, as users in the system. And now I wanted to make sure that everyone in the company knew what we were trying to do. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood our initiatives, that they weren't confused when I was throwing around these terms in updates and meetings. So I built a really robust knowledge base, right? I explained everything about NPS and satisfaction. Why do we care? What all dashboards do we have? What are we tracking? What's the long-term goal for these projects? And it's a space where any team member can learn no matter what they're doing. So everyone felt involved in the cause, even if they weren't directly in front of a member asking for reviews, even if they weren't a direct Qualtrics user, they really still felt like they knew exactly what was going on organization-wide. Go ahead. The next one was transparency and teamwork. This one was really exciting. This one was something that I didn't expect, and it occurred organically, so that was really cool. When I was building the dashboards in Qualtrics, I was thinking through what kind of limitations I was going to have to impose on those dashboards, right? I was asking my branches, hey, do you want to only see the reviews that are your reviews, that are about your branch or you as an individual? And the reason I was asking that is because obviously there's going to be some negative reviews. Obviously, people are going to get some feedback that could make them feel sensitive and make them feel defensive. And we understood that. And so I wanted to offer them, hey, do you need to receive these alone? Like, do you need to just, it's in a closed group? Do you want a little bit of that information blocked off? And universally, all of my branches decided that they wanted to share all of their information, that they were brave enough and vulnerable enough to be open about the negative reviews that they received. And that decision really sparked a change in the project as a whole, because instead of them only going, oh, wow, look at these glowing reviews that I got, they did do that. But in addition to that, they would bring the bad reviews to the discussion. And they would say, hey, someone said this, and I see that you had a similar experience over at your branch, because we could see the reviews and we could see the notes and we could see the action that those branches took on those items. And they would say, you handled this really well. Could you coach me through that? Could we talk about this? I'm planning on calling this member and following up with them this afternoon, and I'd really appreciate some practical tips. So it was a safe space to actually improve, and to get better on the things that we really needed to work on. And that changed something culturally for us. And that was probably the biggest deal. And it was the collection of building that SharePoint base. It was the collection of that transparency that made everyone really excited for the project. And then that excitement turned into agency, right? And at a certain point, this stopped feeling like a project that I had to manage. And it kind of just felt like a project I was checking in on, because they took control of it. They managed it on their own. They ran it. And that was really thrilling for me, because I basically just got to be a cheerleader, you know? So I loved it.
Yeah, we were talking before the stream started a little bit about that. I think that's so central to this story, is that cultural shift to where it becomes less of an ask and something that the whole team is wanting to really pursue and chase. I love that from your story. Tell us a little bit more. You mentioned at the beginning, before we went into the tools and the experience here, different teams that were involved, but let's dive back into that just a little bit. What did each team bring to the table that made this an exceptional project?
That's a very good question. So Qualtrics brought the real-time high-quality data. And without their information and without the tools that they provided where I was able to collect it, I would not have been able to convince people and get people on our side. I am so thankful that we were able to show with evidence, hey, I think this is something we shouldn't be afraid of. This is a project we should approach. It made all the difference in the world, and hesitancy was greatly reduced as we went into this. Red Pepper was just the most wonderful partner. It was like having your subject matter expert, and I felt like in working with Jaron that I had essentially cloned myself. Except it was myself who had studied Qualtrics for 10 years. And so when I asked him to do projects for me, I wasn't worried about the quality. I didn't need to double check them. If anything, he always blew me away with the quality of the projects that he would work on. And that was such a gift to me, because I was able to say, look, I'm going to give you the vision. Here's what I need. And he would just run with it and make it happen. And I was so thankful for that partnership, because he saved me so much time and he really made everything look so sharp, and he did it so quickly. So those are the things that I was probably most thankful for them. And then because of those two great partnerships, I was able to focus on the things that I'm really good at, which is working with people. So I was able to tell the story internally, updating people in teams, constantly getting people really excited, praising and rewarding people. I was also able to remove any internal barriers that we were having at the credit union, right? So if a team member came back to me and was like, Taylor, I'm having trouble with this because, this member asked for me to send it to him in a text and I don't have a solution. I'd be like, done, no problem. And I would start working on a solution and I would drop it in the chat once we were able to do that. So because I was able to focus on the things that I was good at, it ended up, just working out beautifully. And I feel like it was such a cohesive relationship that made the project successful.
That's awesome. Let's also talk about, I think, something we're all very intrigued to hear a little bit more about, but what was the impact, what was the results and sort of the business outcomes of aligning those ratings with the sentiment that was already there?
So the impact of the project is probably the thing that I'm most excited to talk about, because not only did we improve our reputation and improve our ratings, and we did it in record-breaking time that none of us were expecting, we did something much greater than that, and that was change our internal culture. And that was an unexpected result of this project. And the reason I bring this up is because realistically, everyone who's joining this webinar knows that if you wanted to improve your reputation, there are vendors who offer to do that for you, right? You could send this out to somebody and pay them and get it off your plate, and they could run this project for you separately. But if you are interested in doing this in-house, the results that you could see from it might exceed your expectations wildly, like they did ours. Something big that changed for us that was really exciting was during the time that this project launched and when it was really building momentum, I went and looked at our internal NPS for our employees just to see how we were doing. And our eNPS jumped 10 or 11 points the exact same quarter that we were running this project. And that's because the excitement around this project was just palpable. Everyone was talking about it in the hallways at lunch. Like, we were all super excited. We were constantly referencing it. And I even reached out to our HR team and a couple other departments to be like, was anyone else doing anything at the same time? Is there anything possibly adding to this huge jump that we were seeing in our internal scores? And everyone said no. So I was really thrilled to see that those were directly tied. And that cultural shift is probably what made it truly the most successful project I've ever done in my mind, in addition to getting the scores and ratings that we were hoping for in record time.
Love it. I'm going to pivot here slightly. Hopefully this doesn't throw us off our game, Taylor. There is a question in the chat that I think this is the right time to address it. So,
Sure.
Were you able to tie any of this initiative to things like client acquisition or any of those like growth metrics at the broader organizational level?
That is a good question. So we have started to do that, but I don't have final results on that. We did see increased numbers of members during this time. Like, I think we were seeing, and I think on our executive reports, we were seeing like a 20% increase in membership at the time, but I can't definitively say that it is tied exclusively to this project. I would love to be able to say that, but I will have to examine that more closely and let you know.
I know that puts you on the spot a little bit, but
It's okay.
In preparation for this project, for this presentation, I know my team looked over your annual reports, and there was growth across the board for the last 2 or 3 years during the time of this project. And yes, we're not able to tie those things together necessarily, but certainly that momentum was adding to the wins that you guys were already riding. So, if this particular viewer would like to continue to follow up and connect with Taylor, I encourage you to do so. I think more could be had by opening that discussion. Let's talk about the lessons learned. So you got those impressive results. You saw a cultural shift. What are some of the lessons that other organizations and companies might be able to apply from the story that they're hearing from you today?
Yeah, of course. So the first one I have in here is don't be afraid to embrace feedback and transparency. That's something that I'm definitely not afraid of, but I really wanted to get everyone else to adopt that. I do think there's an understandable hesitancy to be very transparent about when we fail, about when we get negative reviews, and getting people on board with not only sharing those things, but working collaboratively to teach one another on how to improve and make those situations better. That made such a huge difference, and that energy still exists within the credit union, right? It's changed who we are fundamentally. Know when to compromise. I actually have this in here more for me than everyone else in this presentation. Usually once I found a project that I'm particularly excited about and I'm like, I have the data, I know that this will make a difference, like, why we have to do this right now. Knowing when to compromise and knowing how to listen to the concerns of other parties really benefited us in this project. Instead of it being us versus other teams that had concerns, what we did was we essentially made it, all of us against this problem of how do we improve these Google reviews. And we were willing to compromise and wait till the completion of another really big project so that everyone felt really confident going into this. And their support was honestly super helpful during this project. So waiting, compromising, those are really valuable tools that, I don't want to overlook here. And then using data in the face of doubt. I think this one was obvious. This was, amazing. Thank you, Qualtrics, for giving me so much information that I could use and show people, real time, like, look at the responses we are getting from people. They really enjoy working with us. And, we've now rolled out multiple surveys across, multiple different departments and for tons of different things. And when I had first started rolling these out, I was concerned. I was like, oh my gosh, what if this is a fluke? What if we start looking in these other areas and we're not seeing consistent scores and things start to change? I was a little scared of what we would find, but we were brave. And over time, we found that people are overall very, very satisfied. And so that was really exciting. And it's helped me make the case for a lot of other projects in the future. engage your entire team, tell everybody. Do not just tell the handful of people on the project, like, share it organization wide if it's the kind of thing that needs to get people excited, to carry momentum forward. It was totally the right thing to do. And I have in here be the hype person that they deserve. So go the extra mile. I could have very easily just said, yeah, just look at the dashboard and never talk to anybody about it. But going the extra mile and praising them, constantly bringing it up, sending them screenshots, really going over the top in celebrations, it made a huge difference and people really loved it. And then investing in the right tools and partners, I think that goes without saying. Without Red Pepper and Jaren's relationship, I wouldn't have had that excellence and expertise and all of that knowledge that I just so desperately needed to do a project in a short period of time. And without Qualtrics, I just wouldn't have had all the data and tools that I needed. So I'm really thankful for both of those. And then additionally, we can go ahead and move forward one more slide. I wanted to include learn as you go. So don't be afraid to pivot mid-project. We had a couple of points where we did need to pivot, and I just kind of learned as we were moving through the project. An example of this would be that when I initially set up the automations to notify our team members about the responses that we were receiving, I didn't want them to feel overwhelmed and I didn't want their inbox to be crushed, by the wave of responses that we were receiving. So I was like, you know what, I'm only going to notify them about the negative responses so that they can go ahead and address them really quickly. And then if they want to go look at the positive, they can just go to the dashboard. Very unintentionally, I had created an emotional connection between this project and these negative emails, and people were just not looking forward to looking at them. They would get anxiety about opening them. And when they told me that, just kind of, in the hallway and in the chats, I was like, no problem. Let's fix this immediately. And so I made automations so that they would receive the positive and the negative, and I helped them, set up their inbox so that they were not getting overwhelmed and flooded with things. But what they were seeing was, oh my gosh, to every one negative comment, I'm getting 25 stellar comments. And so that made all the difference in the world. And people were seeing what I was seeing, which is just like, we have got to connect these two. And that was a change that was definitely necessary mid-project. The other thing I wanted to mention was balancing push and sustainability. So once we hit our 4.0 goal, I think a lot of people asked me, they were like, let's keep going to 5. And I was like, 100%. I love the energy. Thank you so much. But realistically, I think we should pause and slow down, because at that point, you have over 1,000 reviews. And to get to 5, I would need many more thousands of reviews. And so I told them, I was like, we're going to actually celebrate this moment. We're going to pause. We have completed what we needed to do, and we're going to sit back and relax, and we're just going to make this a regular part of our process so it doesn't exhaust anyone, it doesn't overwhelm anyone. And now they just really enjoy it overall. And it's just kind of left like a general positive, happy vibe among our team members, which I really appreciate. And then focus on genuine improvement. This is just because I had a discovery mid-project that I wasn't anticipating, right? So don't be so focused on your metrics and your short-term and long-term goals that you overlook the opportunity to make real, genuine change in your organization. Ryan and I were not expecting to have such a cultural change where, this totally transformed the way we share information. We're so open. I do not have a single private dashboard. I do not have a single private survey. Everything is available to everyone to look at and to test and to get feedback on. And we got that from this project. So I would just encourage everyone to look up from their metrics and just make eye contact with their team members and go, wait, I think something bigger might be happening here, because that's honestly what happened to us.
I think your story is such a great example of the power of experience management and customer experience, focus on customer experience. We really appreciate you sharing your insights today, Taylor. I love the concept of this cultural shift and the impact that your team had on the overall destiny of this larger organization. And you guys are quite a large credit union, and it's amazing to see how something focused on an area like this can help keep that trajectory on its way up. We will ask a couple questions. We'll go into the Q&A now a little bit. So if anyone has any additional questions they want to add into the chat, please do so now. But we'll start with this one, Taylor. What other projects and surveys have you done with Qualtrics in addition to this one that was more focused on improving the Google ratings?
Okay, great question. So we've done a lot of things since then. The project I most recently launched was about finding the reason that we were having loans approved, but members were not proceeding with funding them. There was an assumption that this is just happening because, as we all know, people shop around and they just might be looking for different options. But we really didn't have concrete information to support that. It was just an assumption. And so we launched a survey to kind of uncover this information. And what we have discovered in the month that has been live is that there's actually a myriad of reasons that people might choose not to proceed with the funding process with us. And it's opened our eyes to so many things that we can fix and improve for members so that we can hopefully just turn even just a small portion of those not funded into funded loans. That will make a huge difference to us financially. We've learned things like, yeah, we knew maybe they had found a better rate somewhere. We knew that was a chance. But we've also learned, hey, there was a huge gap in communication, right? I didn't receive the paperwork to follow up for this for a couple of days. And, I just kind of lost interest or got distracted and did other things. Lots of people have let us know that they still want us to follow up with them, but that they just needed more time to finish shopping for their vehicle or make final decisions. And I was like, oh, this is so helpful because we were ending this conversation sooner than it needed to be ended. People have let us know that they didn't know what documentation they needed. They kind of felt overwhelmed by the process. So now we have someone who is specifically trying to figure out, how can I preemptively get this information to members and really explain, here, this is what this is. This is what we're looking for. If you don't have this, that's okay. We can help you find it. So there were lots of different reasons that we were just kind of assuming fell under this one category of like, oh, it's normal to shop around. And now we're able to address all of those, which is pretty exciting. But I've also done a lot of other surveys. We have surveys on multiple of our application experiences, right? Our mortgage application, our online loan application. We have surveys tied to our wealth management meetings, our new and existing clients. We have surveys obviously tied to our transaction experience. And we have new surveys planned for next year, which are about overall relationship long term for members. So that's pretty exciting.
That's cool. This is sort of a two-part question. You weren't getting as many volume Google reviews initially, and then we've gone through this project where that spiked up. And then I think you mentioned earlier that you're back down to around 30 per month. Is that so? That's the first part of the question. Is that where you're back at?
That is accurate, yes.
And what would you attribute? I guess this is kind of two parts on this part too. So do you attribute that slowdown? A lot of these things are now just baked into your process. Is that just kind of a stable point at which you'll sit at for a while? And then are you still seeing like a similar volume of negative reviews, or has the focus on customer experience shifted the kind of reviews that you get even though it's back down?
Great question. We have actually seen a reduction in our negative reviews. So instead of saying kind of at that consistent number, we have seen that decline, which is very exciting. A lot of those reviews, because people follow up, will actually change and get turned into positive reviews over time. So that is always wonderful to see. But we did find that our natural resting point was in and around those 30 reviews, and that has just repeated itself month over month over month. And I think that is because we just built those existing tools into our process. So people feel like they're within reach, that it's a really easy conversation for them to have. And it's especially an easy conversation for them to have when they're in those kind of one-on-one meeting sessions. So when they have the time to really sit down with a member and they're face-to-face, it's just so easy for them to kind of wrap up the meeting and discussion cleanly with like, if you enjoyed your time here, please let us know. We would love to hear your feedback. We always really appreciate it. And I think that's what's kept those numbers there. And I think when they first dropped from 60 to 30, we weren't concerned. We were anticipating a drop. But we were interested to see whether they would trickle back down to that 15, 10, 5 kind of level. And they haven't. So that's been really great. And I'll continue to track it for the next year and hopefully it will remain.
Yeah, you guys are still on your path to that 5.0 eventually, right?
Yeah,
Over
that's the
time.
goal. Just a couple thousand reviews away.
Hey, 30 reviews a month, you'll get there. You'll get there at some point. Okay, let's take this as the last question. Any additional insights into getting people more comfortable with feedback? Sort of that hurdle that you talked about. How do we get people comfortable accepting that negative feedback initially?
It's a painful answer. It's modeling it yourself. So that is the number one thing I did that made a really big difference. I put all of my systems and all of my projects out in very public discussions. And I request that if you have a bad experience with a project that I worked on or a tool that I worked on, that you put your feedback in a very public chat, because I do not want you to send it privately. I want to model how I handle negative feedback in that moment. And granted, our team members are respectful when they're communicating something, but they're still letting me know that something I worked on let them down in some capacity, right? So they're saying, this tool is not what I need it to be. This is not working. You need to fix this. And I show them what that response is supposed to look like, right? Like, thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. I really appreciate it. I want you to know that I'm taking this seriously. Here's the date that I've scheduled to work on this. I will absolutely keep you informed as I make progress. And then you show them once you fixed it, and you celebrate them for giving you that negative feedback, right? So I always send them points. I thank them very publicly. And I say, great feedback. Like, I'm thankful for the good feedback. I'm thankful for when people tell us they love us. That's awesome, but I can't do anything with that. That doesn't help me. Yay, I'm glad you're happy that we're great. What I can do something with is people who are unhappy. That's where I can really make some traction, So when someone's unhappy, I can really turn that into an incredible experience. And that's what makes people promoters. That's what makes them lifetime members. That's what makes them go, oh, I would never go anywhere else. And so I would say the number one tip is modeling it successfully and doing that in all of your projects for a long time. And it will just become normal. People will see you do it and they will feel comfortable doing it themselves.
Love that. I love that perspective that we can turn those moments of unhappiness into long-term loyal clients or customers by handling that correctly, and colleagues as well. That's awesome, Taylor. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. This has been a wonderful 45 minutes of insights, and I hope that those that have joined us out there in the audience have gained something from it. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time today. We appreciate Qualtrics and all of our partners for inviting people to come to the webinar today. Reach out to us at Red Pepper at any point in your XM program. We would love to work with you. And again, thank you, Taylor. We love working with you in particular, and all of our clients who are already working with us. So thank you to everyone, and we'll leave that here. Have a good day. Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you. How did you feel?
That's great.